continuing with Savta stories. I think we left off with you and Dad moving to, was it Fort Campbell, or where did you start?
We started in Fort Sam Houston, Texas, which was San Antonio. And that was where they did all the Army stuff, where they taught you to be a soldier even though you were never going to soldier. And so we headed down there, and I got a job teaching school.
Where'd you teach?
Second grade. It was on the post, and they were all Army kids. And I'll never forget this one little girl, this second grader, who just kind of never became a part of the group. And I tried to help her with it, to get her to enjoy being with other kids. And she said to me, "What's the sense?" She said, "I just make friends and then we move again." She said, "I don't want to do that." So I could see her point. It was tough. But now I think about it, I take it back. I didn't teach school there. I waited until I got to Fort Campbell in Kentucky. That's where I taught school. But we had a great time in Fort Sam Houston. The Burgers were there. They came also. And, suddenly we had some money. Kenneth went in as a first lieutenant. Oh, we got a noisy boat here. And then after a year, he automatically became a captain.
How did that, was that because he was in school or something? Or?
That's because he was a dentist. And
right.
That was the way that all the dentists went. And he worked hard to get through the basic training. The biggest day that he had was when he went snake hunting. And they had to crawl through the fields, and all the guys wrapped Kotex around their knees so their knees wouldn't get scratched up. And then and he hated snakes, and they were supposed to look for snakes. Anyway, fortunately he lived through that. But when he came home to the apartment, I wouldn't let him in unless he stripped down to the bare bottoms, because I don't want anything from that field coming into the apartment. And we were there in the summertime. Summertime is definitely not a time to be in Texas. The bugs were unbelievable. There were roaches all over, and they were in the nicest department stores. You go look in the windows, and there'd be these big things crawling on the floor. You could see that it never left me. And the worst time, I don't know, I'm sure I told you this, was one night when we came home, and I went into the kitchen and turned on the light. There were gazillions of these roaches all over. And within 30 seconds, you couldn't find a one. They had all disappeared to wherever they'd come from. But it scared me silly. And from then on, anytime we came home, I would yell. I'd say, "Hey, hey, hey, we're home. We're home."
Did that help?
I never saw another roach. Never saw another roach. So anyway, it was a really neat time there. And but it was 5 weeks, and then the Burgers went to their assignment, and we went on to Fort Campbell, which was the home of the 101st Airborne. And father was attached to the 101st Airborne, and we were really scared that they were going to make him jump out of the plane. But fortunately, he didn't have to do that. And that was where we met some dear people there. We met Judy and Howie Chronic there, and became fast friends, as you know, because I'm still friends with Judy. And they had just had a baby, David, so they were a year ahead of us when we had our first. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the baby Karen came at an inopportune time, because my OBGYN loved jumping, and he was off jumping. But we had a good substitute, and she was born after a year at Fort Campbell. We had a nice apartment on the post, and the Chronics, they were off post. They had an apartment in town. We had a really nice rabbi. Aunt Judy came to visit, and she had a thing for him, but she wasn't there that long. And when Karen was born, both sets of grandparents came to see the new baby. They came together. My father drove. Kenneth's father and mother swore they would never get in the car with him again.
Why?
They said he drove too fast and he was wild. So, but he got them there fast. And, but for the first part that we were there, I did teach school. 2nd grade was when I taught there. And then when Karen was born, it was May. And of course, I left teaching then for a while. And we had the greatest nurse. She was terrific.
A baby nurse.
A baby nurse. Yeah, she was there. I was in the hospital for a week. It was a week in those days. Actually, it was 8 days. I didn't want to go home, so they let me stay another day. And Judy was wonderful. She was there helping also, and letting me use her buggy. And
were you nervous about being a new mom?
yeah, you know, except I had this wonderful woman who taught me the ropes, except I had a colicky kid crying all the time. And so when the nurse left, I'd be with the baby, and when your father came home, I was at the door with the baby in my hands. He was coming up the walk. I was opening the door, handing Karen to him, and I was out of there.
Where'd you go?
I just went walking. I could not wait to get out of there. And but it was a really good experience. Kenneth joined. They had a choir, a Jewish guy's choir. He sang in it and loved it. And we did our thing with Friday nights at all the Jewish people came to services on Friday, mostly to just meet the other Jewish people and socialize. And so we had some nice friends there. I thought he was going to have to go. It was Lebanon that we were fighting with then, and I thought he was going to have to go there. gave him all his shots, his yellow fever and every shot known to man, all at the same time. He was so sick. And then in the end, he didn't go.
How long did you end up staying there?
At Fort Campbell? Well, our total time in the Army was 2 years. 5 weeks of it was at Fort Sam Houston. And we used to, he used to get furloughs, so we'd get in the car and drive home. We'd leave in the evening so that Karen would sleep in the car, get home in the morning, pass her off to B, and we go to bed. And B never complained about it. So, thought, I don't remember what he did, but he was so worried that the colonel in charge, his name was Schwinghammer. He was miserable. And we thought he was going to court-martial your father because he did something that he didn't like. But fortunately, we got out of there. And then he was supposed to be in the reserves for a couple of years. But he wrote a letter to them saying respectfully he'd like to leave because he had no real interest in being in the reserves. They said, okay.
Oh.
That was that. So then we came back, set up practice across the street from the apartment we rented. We had a phone that went to the office. God forbid we should miss a phone call for an appointment. And his father had built the building, so he had a building to go to. And that was the building that he practiced in the whole time that he was in practice.
And did you go back to teaching when you got back?
I did, but not right away because you came along. And so, I mean, we got back in August, and you came along the next year. So, actually, I might have taught for a while till she fired me.
Because
I was pregnant. God forbid you should be pregnant in teaching school. It was better than my sister Sylvia. She couldn't even be married. They didn't even take married teachers in those days.
really,
You were married, tough luck. So, and this woman, she was a single lady, and she really, I think, didn't like married people with child. Even though I was doing as good a job as anybody, she said no. So, you were born, and we moved into our house on Illinois after our experiences with Dr. Donnelly running for Help You Breathe. And so we moved onto Illinois Street, stayed there for 7 years. George was born. The riots came along just at the time we decided to move. And so we moved on to Bluefield on the Lake, where you grew up.
yes, I did.
In many ways. We were there for 7 years. That was really nice. I think I taught a little more.
How many years did you teach altogether?
Probably about 8. Maybe about 8 years.
So you must have gone back to teaching at some point. Then you teaching.
When George was born, I was finished. That was the end of it.
Did you like being a teacher?
It had its good points and its bad. I loved a lot of the kids. They were sweet. And some of them were a pain in the ass. And I mean, there was one kid, I'll never forget him. He was a big, big kid. And my first teaching at Willow Run. And he didn't like me at all. And one day he was across the street from when I was leaving, and he said, "Come on, Mrs. Dickstein, you come over on this side of the street and let's have a talk." I didn't go. It looked like something I wanted to get into.
And did you teach on Orchard Lake Road or something? One of those schools?
It was Whitfield School.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone now like so many other schools. It was a good school. It took in a lot of the Jewish kids in the area. And I taught at a place called Baldwin School, which didn't excite me. So I was ready to give it up. I had more fish to fry. Did a lot of other things in my life. Later on I worked in the office, and I had worked at English as a second language. That was a volunteer thing. I didn't get paid for it. But I worked at the office. I got paid for that. That's how I got my Social Security.
And you did a lot of other volunteer work.
I did a lot of volunteer work. I worked hard at the temple. Ended up being president of the sisterhood, and then I was president of the temple. We enjoyed the temple. The temple was one of those places where all my friends from today practically are from Temple Beth Jacob.
Did you develop your Jewish connection or your connection to Judaism growing up, or was it a big part of your family life when you were growing up?
No, it was no part of my family life. My father and mother, they had belonged to this little Orthodox shul where their friends belonged. But then they joined Temple Bethel for us. And they went on the high holidays. I went to Sunday school, and my brother Bernie went to Sunday school. Now, he graduated from Bethel. His picture is on the wall. I only went through third grade. And then I just felt I didn't want to do it anymore. I was taking the bus. And after he graduated, I didn't have anybody to take the bus with.
Where was it located?
It was in Midtown Detroit. And I was taking it from Royal Oak. And I can't believe, well, I guess it was because Bernie was with me, because when I think about it, third graders would be 8 or 9 years old taking the bus. But the kids were cliquey. They all came from the same area, and I just wasn't one of them. So I left. And that was the end, really, of religious deal. But when I went to college, I made a promise to myself that I was only going to date Jewish guys.
How come?
Because I just felt it was something I wanted to do. I'd had my fill of other people, and I thought it was the thing to do. So, I mean, my mother didn't say it to me. It was just my decision. And it worked out. I didn't go out with any other guys.
So what brought you to Temple Bethel? or temple Beth Jacob?
Kenneth's family had been members. The whole family belonged. And they had helped to found the thing. And they were very involved. And Kenneth became president of the temple. He was very involved in the men's club. In fact, they think I'm crazy over there. I am a member of the Brotherhood. And the first time I paid my dues, one of the Brotherhood members called me. And he said, you don't have to belong to the Brotherhood, because Kenneth had already passed away. I said, you know what? The Brotherhood was very important to him. And I don't mind. I'll just be a member of the Brotherhood. So he said, well, if you don't mind, we don't mind. So I'm a member of the Temple Brotherhood. I get all their messages. And never been to a meeting, but I'm there. Anyway.